Guys, can you just confirm me whether the voice is clear? Okay. All right. Okay. So what we will do today, we will be starting with the next thinker. We will start with Robert Merton. Okay. So in this session, when we start with Merton, what we need to see is the most important point that we need to discuss. They may ask you Merton's functionalism. So there is a difference in Merton's approach, or there is a difference in Merton's functionalism that towards the end I'll discuss, and then you will understand. He is considered to be the father of neo-functionalism. So this functionalism, Merton is also a functionalist, but it's a kind of modified functionalist. So till now, there were some criticisms, there were some problems with the existing functionalist approach. So first, what we need to discuss, or what Merton do in the beginning, is he'll discuss about the functionalism so far, and he will highlight the criticisms of these approaches. So if you remember, we have started off with this functional approach right from Auguste Comte, right? Initial sociologists, they are positivist and they were functionalist. So Auguste Comte, we have discussed about Auguste Comte, and then although it is not there in the syllabus, we have mentioned it when we discussed about the scope of sociology. Separately, we have not taken. And then we have also seen Herbert Spencer. So Auguste Comte's approach is related to consensus. So society is based on consensus. That approach is what you see in Auguste Comte. So that is a functional approach. And then we have seen this Herbert Spencer. He compared society with an organism, and he introduced the structural functional approach, which will be taken forward or carried forward by Emile Durkheim. And when that's where we are giving more focus, and we have understood in more detail because that is directly there in your syllabus. So when it comes to Emile Durkheim, what all things we have seen, he has been using scientific methods for the purpose of ensuring objectivity, and he separated cause and function. So one of the most important problem within functionalism was illegitimate teleology. Okay, so everybody is considering cause and function as the same in most of the analysis, but that's not the same. That's not necessarily the same according to Durkheim. And he separated the cause and function. And if you remember the theories that we have discussed, he always do that, right? And we have studied it as causal functional explanation. Cause we explain first, and then we explain the function. He do that separation to avoid the illegitimate teleology. So illegitimate teleology is a situation where you explain the cause and function as the same. And that is one of the most important problem or criticism in functional approach, except in Durkheim. Only Durkheim have separated this cause and function to avoid this problem. One of the most common problem in functionalism was that. And guys, you might not have studied, we will not be studying that because these two thinkers are not part of our syllabus, like Radcliffe Brown, then Malinowski. So Radcliffe Brown's functionalism is a kind of anthropological functionalism. Then there is, I'm saying what Merton is doing. So he introducing all these names. And then Malinowski's approach is like psychological functionalism. That's a different aspect. So we don't want to get into Radcliffe Brown and Malinowski if you are not preparing for any state exams. Some of the state exams, these thinkers might be required. Even Comte, Spencer also you need in detail. But as of now, it is not there in our syllabus. They will not be asking you questions from Radcliffe Brown or Malinowski or any of these. In case if they're asking about Merton, you just need to mention that the Radcliffe Brown's approach is anthropological functionalism. It is related to something like necessary condition of existence. That approach is like that. And then Malinowski's approach is related to individual functionalism or psychological functionalism. So Comte, based on consensus, and Spencer, it was related to structural functionalism, comparing with organisms. And then Durkheim's approach, we have seen separation of cause and function using scientific methods. And Radcliffe Brown, anthropological functionalism. Malinowski, individual or psychological functionalism. And towards the end, what we have discussed in detail and in depth is what Parson. And we have seen Parson is also a functionalist and trying to identifying the functions. And we have seen the theory. And we have concluded that Parson have taken functionalism to its logical conclusion by giving a grand theory or a generalized theory or an abstract theory, right? So multidisciplinary framework is what Parson have used. So with that, functionalism have almost came to an end. Means he have taken functionalism to its logical conclusion, and he gave a theory of system which could explain everything. That's what you mean by abstraction. He did it, he dealt it with the level of abstraction, and he took it to that level where you can explain anything with the help of AGIL. So when it comes to Merton, he have to do certain new things into this. That is the modified form of functionalism, or you can term it as Neo-Functionalism. And in this context, you can also consider Merton as a father of Neo-Functionalism. So what are the changes that Merton have brought in? If you need to understand that, we briefly need to talk about the criticisms of these functionalisms so far. So what are the most important criticisms that we have discussed here and there when we discussed about Durkheim, Parson, etc.? First and most importantly, they have ignored conflict, right? So all the time we criticize Durkheim, Parson in which dimension? Their ignorance on conflict. So what you will see in Merton's approaches, he will incorporate that also. So in Merton's functionalism, the conflict dimension, something which you have studied in Marx, will also be added. That means he'll not only try to identify the function, he also tried to identify the dysfunction. I'll give you the context and I'll give you that particular dimension in a separate heading, separate postulate. There is something called as postulate. That is what I'm going to discuss after some time. But just now, you just understand the criticism, ignorance on conflict. Second, most important criticism within functionalism was illegitimate teleology. Except in Durkheim's case, every thinkers, every functionalist are facing this problem. So this was a main problem within functionalism. Then lack of proper use of methods. Though it is not applicable in case of Durkheim, he have used methods, statistical techniques, indirect experiment, comparative analysis, and all those multivariate analysis and everything we have seen. Durkheim have used methods directly from natural science like statistical techniques, and he have developed methods for sociology, but this is not applicable in case of Durkheim. But when it comes to Parson and all, have you seen he is using any particular method to establish that theory? No, right? He just randomly gave a theory which he himself cannot understand, and he is taking it to that level of abstraction. So the legitimacy of that particular theory is actually questioned by Merton in terms of lack of use of proper methods. So he gave a theory, but without using any proper methods. Okay, so that is also one of the criticism. So, and the practical applicability of all these theories, whether it is even Durkheim's theory, practical applicability is a question. And one of the criticism that we have seen is these thinkers, they claim that they are inductivist, but it looked like the theories look like a deductive theory. And it is in most of his theory, even if I'm talking from Durkheim, because one of the most prominent sociologists is Durkheim, right? So even if I talk from Durkheim's side, it looks like most of the theories are there in his mind even before he take up the analysis, right? So this is also one of the question, one of the criticism, like the practical applicability. So these are the main criticisms that you can talk about, or what Merton highlighted. And his approach is actually to solve these problems or to incorporate this problem, and he gave a new approach. That's the neo-functionalist approach. So why he's called as father of neo-functionalism? In his approach, you will see new dimensions. That can be a question. What are the new dimensions? So he summarized all these, functional approach so far. He highlighted the problem and he put his view in terms of three postulates, which is popularly known as Merton's postulates. That is one of the most important questions which you can actually expect from Merton. The first question that we are going to deal today is with that Merton's postulates. There are three postulates. What he did is he summarized all these points and he highlighted his own point on that. So the first, just 1 minute. The first, there are three postulates: postulate of functional unity, and then the postulate of functional indispensability, and then the postulate of universal functionalism. So I'll just write it here, the three postulates. So the question will be Merton's postulates. So guys, now I'm not repeating the same things. I have already explained the context for this. Now we are going to answer directly. What are these postulates? Okay. So the postulate of functional unity. Postulate of functional. I'll explain each one of this unity and then postulate of functional indispensability, and the third one, postulate of universal functionalism. Okay, so these are the three postulates of Merton which you need to write. Now they can ask you one more question, that the new concepts which is introduced by Merton. Out of the many concepts which are new, which is introduced by Merton, you can find around 4 in these 3 postulates itself. Okay. Apart from that, there are some other new concepts as well that I'll be discussing when we proceed further. So let's start with the first one. Okay. So guys, if you see this postulate of functional unity. Okay, so far the approach of the functionalist is like this. Any system, if there is a system, for example, if you consider this class as a system and the constituent of the system, okay, the constituent means the parts of the system. That means we all are part of the system. In this case, individuals. If I'm talking about the computer, it is the parts. If I'm talking about the AC, it is the parts. Okay, so there is a system and the constituents. So the assumption so far is each and every element, each and every constituent of the system is fulfilling some vital function and necessarily contributing towards the integration, means for the functioning of the system. So this is the approach so far. So they believe that the elements or the parts are necessarily contributing in a positive way to the system. Okay, so and these constituents ensure the unity of the system. So this is the assumption in case of functionalism. So there are systems, there are constituents of the system, there are parts of the system, and the role of the parts of the system is to ensure the unity of the system. For example, if you consider our class as a system, the parts are we all, right? You, me, and everyone. And what is the assumption here? Every constituent is trying to ensure the unity of the system. To an extent, it will be correct. You cannot say no. But what Merton says is it necessarily like that? Will it be exactly like this? Each and every constituent will be ensuring unity of the system. It is not necessarily. There may be temporary situation also can come. There may be some parts or there may be some constituent which may have tendency to create disintegration, right? It can act as dysfunction. So the point here is if there may be parts which can also create dysfunctions for the system. So there can be a disintegrating influence by a particular part, which is also possible. So you cannot ignore that aspect. I hope you got the point. So what he's saying is it is not necessary that each and every constituent in the system is fulfilling the vital functions and it is ensuring the unity of the system. There can be some parts which can create a disintegrating influence in the system. For even if you talk about our class, we can see even this many students are there may be some who can create a disintegrating influence. So if we talk about switch off the mic, if I'm not turning it off from my side, there can be some disintegrating influence, knowingly or unknowingly, right? So that is what you mean by this. So this can act as dysfunction. So what is ignored so far is that disintegrating influence or the dysfunction, and Merton have taken that into consideration and he talked about dysfunction here. Okay, so there can be some elements which can be dysfunctional, which can create disintegrating influence for the particular system. Guys, this is a very simple point. I hope you all have understood this. There is no confusion, right? This is a criticism that we have discussed everywhere, the functionalist ignoring conflict or the dysfunction. Merton is just adding that. That's it. All right. Now the second one, functional indispensability. Guys, indispensability means like inevitability. The functionalists believe that there are certain institutions or some things which are there in society which are indispensable, means which are inevitable. Like when we talk about family, we consider this as an inevitable social reality. Religion is considered as inevitable social reality, right? It is indispensable and it is part of our life like that. So what Merton says is it is not necessary. Now, why it is considered indispensable? Because of the functions it is providing. Like family provides certain function. Because of that, family is an inevitable social reality or an indispensable social reality. I hope you got that point. So this is the approach of functionalists so far. These institutions which are present in society, why it is present in society? It is a society which is maintaining it. Why society is maintaining it? Because it is necessarily fulfilling some vital functions for the survival of society. So family is there, and family is indispensable social reality. Religion is there, which is an indispensable social reality because it is conforming or performing certain functions which are necessary. So this is the approach of functionalists. But what Merton says is it is not indispensable in terms of its function. So he introduced another term here. There can be alternatives. So if you talk about family, what are the functions of family? Like if you talk about taking care of aged, it can be done by an alternative. So it is not necessary to take care of aged people. You need to have a family. So you cannot tell family as an indispensable social institution by taking into consideration that aspect. Similarly, taking care of child, right? So in terms of that also, there can be alternative, whether the child care centers or anything. Sexual gratification, there can be alternative, not necessarily family. Emotional security, economic security, there can be alternatives for everything. Okay, so the point here is he is introducing this term. This indispensability is not required. That assumption is actually not correct. So he introduced alternatives. Okay, so that is what the new concepts which has been introduced here. So indispensability is what we have practiced so far in functionalism. So now he introduced this term, alternatives. Okay, now third one is universally functional. Everything which is existing is necessarily fulfilling function, some function. This is what the approach we have seen when it comes to inequality, the stratification onwards. But it is not necessarily functional. It can be non-functional also. It can be dysfunctional. Dysfunction anyway we have discussed here. It can be non-functional also. Now I've told you, right? Now if you take this class we have so many students, right? We have around 150 students. So now listen, with the first case, if you talk about, we can all contribute, okay, and we can do good as a family. So in that case, everybody is contributing. Each and every one of us will be contributing. Then it is going to be functional. Everybody is contributing positively, right? So that is the first case, normal case. Now the second case which I've discussed here, what is that? Disintegrating influence. There can be some spams and all which will come, right? That can be there. So what is that? That is the disintegrating influence. So one or two can be dysfunctional, knowingly or unknowingly. I just to make you understand this point I'm saying. Normally, when I take trading classes, it will not happen here. When I take trading classes, that can happen. There are some other community, the people will join us and then they will post certain comments and all, right? So then that will be considered as like spamming. That's what I mean to say here. But I hope you understood there can be some disintegrating influence. That's a dysfunction in the system. It can be a dysfunction. That's what we have discussed here. But so we discussed two. There are students who are positively contributing, and there are students who are negatively contributing, creating disturbance. There can be another group. What is that? Some people will come, sit silent, and just listen. No positive contribution, no negative contribution, just leave. Right? So that group is what? Non-functional. Neither functional nor dysfunctional. They are non-functional. So these three situations will be there. So Merton says, you should not only consider the function, you also need to have dysfunctions, you also need to understand non-function. So the idea is to take this one, net balance. Now, what is net balance and everything, I'll tell you guys. Later we can understand how you make a functional theory. In that context, we can explain in detail what is net balance. Otherwise, it's like this only. If you need to study family, take the positives of family. Okay, let's say there are some positives, we add the positives. Then take the negatives of family, add the negatives. Okay, and if you're a biased person against family, you will find more negatives, right? And then attach certain weights to positives and negatives. You can attach one here, one here, one here, one here, or two here, one here. It's up to you. That is left to the investigator. Here the bias can come. So my point here is identify the functions, identify the dysfunctions. Non-function anyway will be neutral. It won't create any change in your position. So functions and dysfunctions will be identified, and take sigma of it, sigma of function, sigma of non-dysfunction, and see what is more. If dysfunctions is more, that institution is altogether dysfunctional. If functions are more, then that institution is altogether considered as functional. So that's what you mean by net balance. Take the total. All right. So I hope you guys have understood these three concepts. Dysfunction, we started off with here, and then alternative, we discussed here, and then the net balance. Now, apart from this, he also talked about certain other concepts, right? That is again very important. He talked about this manifest and latent function. Guys, this word, have you ever seen this word latent before? Anywhere? You remember? Anywhere we discussed this? Tell me where. Yes, I know that. Yeah. Social system, when we discuss social system, not by Weber, who's that? In AGIL, latency we discussed, right? Then I've told you it is a hidden aspect, okay? So we have discussed that it is a hidden aspect. So latent means something which is hidden. Okay, manifest means what is direct. So when I say here it is function, there can be two types of function. One is manifest function, one is the latent function. Now, what is manifest function? Something which is perceived by the actor. When I do certain action, when I'm teaching you, what is a manifest function? How to attach weights is up to the investigator. That is very subjective. So Merton is not giving any rules for that. It is very subjective. So that makes this approach very subjective. So guys, let me complete this point and you can ask these doubts later. So guys, manifest and latent function. Anyway, we are into the another topic here. Guys, manifest and latent means manifest is something which is direct function. When we do certain things, we are expecting this will happen. When you're attending this class, what you're expecting, you're going to score good in sociology and you're going to get good rank in your exam. So that is a manifest function. What is the latent means the hidden function. So when you're studying sociology, what is that hidden advantage that you're getting? You'll be scoring good in essay. You'll be scoring good in paper 1 GS. And you may have very good score in interview also. And even after becoming an IAS or IPS officer, you can understand the social problems and society better than any math student or a physics student or an electrical engineering student. Yes or no? That is the hidden function. So manifest is your own, like what, when I'm doing certain things, I want this to happen. So taking into consideration that I'm doing, that is what we mean by manifest function. So this is from individual side. This is the meaning attached by the actor to the action. What is when you're sitting here, what is the meaning attached by you to the action? I want to score good in sociology. So what is the outcome? You will score good in sociology. So what is a manifest function? That you are scoring good in sociology. You got it? So this is the meaning attached by the actor to the action, directly perceived by the actor. I know when I do this, this is what's going to happen. So that is the manifest function. This is the individual function. This is the direct function. That is a function for you. Okay, so I'll just write it here. Individual function or the direct function. Now, you remember the word that I have used, the meaning attached by the actor to the action. Where we discussed this word before. Can you guys recollect? The meaning attached by the actor to the action. The functions which is perceived by the, yes, Weber, right? Durkheim, who's saying that? Durkheim. Divya, what is this? Where did I discuss about meaning in Durkheim? It's Weber, okay? So it is individual function, direct function. So when we do certain things, we intend this to happen. So this is the intended outcome. I'm using another term here, intended function or intended outcome. So what it will be here? Unintended outcome. Okay, unintended, let me write it as function. Normally outcome, unintended function. So here, intended function means, this intended means what? This is a meaning attached by the actor to the action. That's what I intend to happen. Now, from the perspective of from the side of methodology, if you look into, there is an element of non-positivism here. Guys, all these points need to be written very clearly in your answer. That's how it becomes sociological rather than just writing some random stuff. Okay, so these are the key points which have to be there in your answer. So from the point of view of methodology or perspective, there is an element of non-positivism here. Why? Because it is the meaning attached by the actor to the action. It is the intended function. That means here it is the intention of the actor is very important. It is an individual function because the function belongs to that individual. And it is a direct function which is perceived by the actor. That is what you mean by manifest. Exact opposite is what latent. It is a function of society. It is societal function. I've told you, you are studying sociology. Another student who studied math. Okay, both have cracked this exam. Both have become a DM or IPS officer or IAS officer or whatever it is. Who will benefit society the most? Because the sociology students can understand the problems much better than any others. So you will benefit the society better. So in a way, that is a hidden function for the society. That is the unintended. You never intended that to happen when you selected sociology. Yes or no? It is not for later you becoming an IAS officer and I can serve better. And that's the reason why I'm taking sociology. Is it so? No, right? It is because you know sociology is the best one to score good. So you have taken it. So here it is manifest function. That is the intended meaning. but there is an unintended outcome which can happen later. That is a societal function, because there is no intention there. You are never intending that to happen, but unintentionally that will happen. Something happens, some issues happen, some women related issues, some caste related issues happen. You can understand things better, you can take actions better. So that is a function for society. That is unintended function. You never intended that to happen, but it happened because of your knowledge which you gained here. That's what it is, a function for society, but here it is a function for individual. You got it, you cracked it. That is what you wanted to happen. Here you never wanted to happen, but it happened and it is good for society. Okay, and it is here, it is direct, so it will be indirect, intended, unintended. Okay, so here it is a function for society, giving importance to society, here individual. So here it is, there is an element of positivism. Now, you just change this word function to outcome, manifest and latent outcome. Now guys, for any action that you do, there will be outcome. Now it can be function or it can be dysfunction. Outcome can be function or dysfunction. And function can be manifest and latent. In the similar way, there can be manifest and latent dysfunctions also. Any action you do, corruption. For everything, there can be manifest latent function. There can be manifest latent dysfunction. For example, if I talk about corruption, now you may think that there is only dysfunction here. And dysfunction, I can talk about manifest and latent, right? There are dysfunctions. Obviously, corruption, you consider it as bad, evil practice, and only dysfunction. Manifest dysfunction, you can talk about. Latent dysfunction, you can. Manifest means there will be direct loss to people or society. And latent means in future, things will get like this and that and all those things, right? So latent, which is something which is going to happen in future for the society. Okay, manifest, obviously, when you're paying money to someone, you are getting an added advantage. That is the reason why you are paying money. So somebody is losing, obviously. That is a manifest dysfunction. And latent means it is bad for society. These are function. Yes, right? When you're paying the bribe, there are functions. It's like in this red tapism and this bureaucracy, when the slow process is there, when you're paying money, things will get faster. So there is a manifest function also for the person who pay that. That's the reason why he pay money. And the person who receive also, for them, it is functional. Okay, and maybe for society, whatever happened, if it benefits the society, it can be functional as well. So for everything, there can be function and dysfunction. And function can be manifest. That means directly, this is what you need to happen. So when I'm paying money, what is the manifest function? I'm getting some advantage. So that is manifest function for me. I'm involved in corruption and I'm paying money to you. So is there function? For you and me, there is function. I'm getting an advantage. That's why I'm paying. So that is function for me. That is the intended meaning. You are taking money. What is the intended meaning? You're getting money. So that is a function for you. Okay, that similarly latent function may be there. Similarly, dysfunction also manifest and latent. For every, now again, guys, when we talk about violence against women, I'll tell you, this is how you need to write certain answers. Violence against women, also we will write in this way. There will be manifest violence and there will be latent violence. Now, manifest means what? Direct violence, actual act of aggression. You're beating women or sexual harassment, and all these are manifest. Latent means hidden. Okay, like the indecent representation, low wage for work, etc. With this also you can divide in family. You can say that. But whether it is functional or not is a different question. Feminization of agriculture. Family and society. Within family, manifest. In society, manifest. Latent, again, in family and in society. So if you see manifest violence in family, marital rape you can write, okay, domestic violence you can write, and whatever you want you can write. The actual act of aggression you need to write when you're writing manifest at the level of family. Society also you can write rape, molestation, sexual harassment, and all those things you can write here. These are actual act of aggression. Latent, within family, the discriminatory practices in terms of education, in terms of health, right, in terms of food, all these are discriminatory practices. These are latent, hidden violence. Society, indecent representation of women, low pay, okay, all these you can. I'm not writing it. I'm just giving you the example, how to incorporate these concepts in various answers. Manifest, latent, direct and indirect. Okay, directly perceived and directly understood. something which we normally leave it as such. These are things we generally ignore. When we talk about violence, we only talk about act of aggression. We ignore this. Now tell me guys, is it not going to help you in your essay if you're able to write like this? You got 4 paragraphs done, beautiful 4 paragraphs. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3rd, 4th, this is 4th. Okay. So we were talking about manifest and latent. Now, postulates we have done. Now, if they're asking you about the concepts introduced by Merton, what are the new concepts? We discussed about dysfunction. This is new concept within functionalism. And then he discussed about non-function. He discussed about net balance. He discussed about alternative. He discussed about manifest and latent function and dysfunction also. These are what you need to explain and you need to write if they're asking you a question on new concepts. Now, he also give a paradigm, functional paradigm, which explain how you can make a theory. Now, guys, I want you to follow this even when you're writing your answer also, because Merton have already told you how to write an answer. It's like this only. You take it in that way. Merton is telling the sociologist how to make a theory, how to go for a research, what you need to do if you're a functionalist and if you need to conduct a research. You follow the same thing while you're writing the answer, except the first step, because first step is not in your hand. It is in the hand of the examiner. Otherwise, okay, the first step is you have to select a standardized item when you're going to research something. So he's giving this, you have to select a middle range item. He's talking about middle range theory. I'll talk about that later. Take an item which is middle range. Don't go too elementary item because some kind of generalization is required. And don't go too abstract like Parson, because if you go too abstract, the abstract generalization will not give any scope for testability. Okay, if you go too elementary, you cannot generalize it. That's a problem. If you go for abstractions, you cannot test it. So select an item which is of middle range, like Durkheim, religion, family. These are middle range items. Okay. So after doing that, what you need to do is you need to specify the context. In which context this item is taken into consideration. Why it is very important is because let's suppose you're studying caste system. If you're not mentioning that you're conducting the study in India, then people will not understand what is caste, right? In US and UK societies, the Western societies, caste have never heard of. So you need to specify the context in which you're studying that particular item. Exactly like this, when you're writing the answer, you got the, imagine this is a question that you got. You'll have to write the context. Then what you will do is, Merton says you have to go for post-factum analysis. Post-factum analysis means whatever studies have been conducted so far, you have to go through that and make an analysis within the studies which has been conducted so far and make an understanding. Let's suppose you're studying social action. What Parson did is also the same. He went with all the research and especially with Weber, and he even went to Weber's wife and took that materials and everything. Okay, so post-factum analysis. Now, the next steps are very simple. Fourth, you need to identify the manifest function. That means the functions which is perceived by the actor. 5, you need to identify the latent function. 6, you need to identify the manifest dysfunction. And 7, you need to identify the latent dysfunction. Once you're done with this much, what you need to do is you provide the alternative. You're studying something, is there any alternative? So you think about the alternative and explain. Okay, and finally what you need to do is you need to understand the net balance. Whatever institutions you're studying, you will be studying, see what you're doing here, all the functions you've identified, manifest and latent, and all the dysfunctions you've identified, manifest and latent, and attach certain weightages. Now guys, here you have nothing to do. If you are an investigator which is biased towards that institution, then you will add more weight to functions. If you're biased against that, then you will add more weight to dysfunction. That is up to the investigator. So he have never mentioned any rule when it comes to the attachment of weights to get the net balance. That is a criticism that we can write later. But net balance means identify the functions, put plus, 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 attach certain weightages, identify the minuses, and take sigma of this and take sigma of this and see which one is more. If functions are more, then the item is altogether functional. If dysfunctions are more, then the item is altogether dysfunctional. All right. So this is what you need to know from Merton. There is one theory, which is theory of anomie, which we will do tomorrow. Let me quickly go with the PDF here so that things will be more clear. This PDF covers everything. I've also incorporated the middle range theory in this. Merton, this initial approach, the postulates, okay, explain the postulates, and then the paradigm that we have discussed now, then the middle range theory. Middle range theory means you should not go with too abstract like Parson. At the same time, you should not go too elementary. The problem with too elementary is you will not be able to generalize it. We need generalization. We need to make theory, right? At the same time, the problem with abstraction is you will not be able to test it. Exactly what you have seen in Parson. So Merton want to go with middle range theory, but Merton is not averse of grand theory. Merton is also okay with grand theory. But how to make grand theory? Not by abstractions like by Parson. You have to make small middle range theories and combine it so that the theory that you get will be a grand theory, and the advantage will be the theory which you're getting will be testable. Okay, but the criticism is Merton have never made any such grand theory. He never combined anything, and all those things we can do that later in critical analysis, not here. So let's get into this. As Merton is so easy,